This podcast is brought to you by Flipper, the number one marketplace to buy and sell online businesses and startups. So if you own or run your own online business, have you considered selling your site, your store, your tech, or your app? Well, with world-class combined matching technology, dedicated brokers, and end-to-end services, all at the most efficient price, Flipper makes selling your online business simple. So to get a free valuation, simply visit flipper.com/techtalks. Each month, thousands of online business owners exit with Flipper. Again, to learn more, visit flipper.com/techtalks. Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where today I've got Bob Wambach from Dynatrace on the podcast. We've got a lot to talk about today because with the digital transformation of everything, it feels like we've unwittingly created a data explosion that's often overwhelming organizations, because the reality is every tap, click, swipe from a user, or even a new code deployment or architecture change from a tech team all generates more data that can be captured and analysed. But where do you store that data in a cost-effective manner? And are you ending up with just all data and no answers? Especially when it's stored and analysed in silos, because you're missing out on that crucial ingredient, which is context, of course. So these are just a few of the things I want to talk about today. And one of the main reasons I invited Bob onto the show is to talk about Grail, which is a data lakehouse purpose-built to solve some of these challenges. But I want to understand the problem a little more and the solution and what it means for the future. So buckle up and hold on tight, because no matter where you're listening in the world, I'm going to beam your ears all the way stateside so you can join me and Bob in conversation about all this and much more. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Bob. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Sure. So I am Vice President of Product Marketing and Technical Alliances Marketing at Dynatrace. Joined actually early in 2022, longtime fan of the company. I was really, I considered myself a serial entrepreneur for most of my career, except for a 15-year stint at EMC, where it felt like I was in a bunch of different startups within that company. So I ended up staying there a long time, but been in software marketing for quite some time now.
Fantastic. And over the last few years, I've spoken to quite a few of your colleagues, from Daniel Carl, Rick McConnell, Steve Tack, Aloy Ratbauer, and a few others from Dynatrace on this podcast. But for listeners who've missed those previous conversations, how would you describe what Dynatrace is and the type of problems you solve for businesses?
Yeah, so I would say Dynatrace is a software company that helps governments, companies modernize their operations through digital transformation. So everybody's pretty much going through digital transformation, and much of that is now happening in the cloud. So there's this mass movement to cloud because you can do things faster. You can take advantage of the latest technologies and innovation that's going on in the cloud. You can do things that you can't do in a data center. So because of this, we see applications getting much more distributed and complex, using much more complex infrastructure. So now, because the cloud's become so important, businesses are dependent upon the cloud to drive revenue. It becomes important that everything in the cloud runs as perfectly as possible. And that's very hard to do with traditional means of monitoring things, which typically you monitor things so that when it's not doing what it's supposed to, you can go and fix it. And that can be a very hard thing to do in a very complex environment. So Dynatrace provides a platform that is really uniquely capable of providing very precise answers and intelligent automation for customers as they move towards, our vision of where software really works perfectly.
And one of the reasons I was excited to get you on the podcast today is if we look around at everything that's happened this year and what we can expect to happen next year, the continued digital transformation of just about everything has created somewhat of a data explosion that's often overwhelming organizations. Because if we zoom out for a moment, every tap, click, or swipe from a user, new code deployment or architecture change, and attempted cyber attack all generates more data that could ever be captured and analyzed. So can I ask you share your insights on this topic and the kind of challenges that you're helping your customers with around this?
Well, first of all, the data explosion is something we hear every day that's presenting a problem. When you talk about swiping a card, right? You swipe a card, that can go through hundreds of different elements, pieces of code, and it can also use different types of infrastructure. So when something goes wrong, you really need to be looking at vast amounts of information to figure out what went wrong, why it went wrong. As you said, is there some security threat that I need to know because things seem to be working differently? Maybe it things are going through. It looks like transactions are happening, but are these legit transactions? So customers, what they've been used to doing with just analyzing this information is typically with siloed tools. And with the siloed tools, you're looking at generally a function, not an end-to-end operation. So when you look at a function and something's going wrong, doesn't look right, what else is it connected to? And this is the challenge that's typically been done with people getting together across these different silos and figuring things out. And you simply can't do that with very complex environments where there's always alerts going off, but most of them are not related to each other. So we did a survey and 45% of CIOs said it was getting too costly to keep all the data they want to keep. So they simply don't. They either filter it out, don't retain it, or they move it to lower cost storage tiers where it actually isn't accessible to them. They can't analyze it there. And the only time they would analyze it is if something's really wrong and they need to go and see, can I dig out this old information? And that's not what you want to be doing when things are wrong, going to try and fetch something that is not available to you immediately. So this crush of information is both impacting people's ability to quickly identify and solve problems, but it's also unbearable cost. So the tools that they have, the cost of these tools are actually outpacing the value that they get from.
It feels like a real catch-22 situation there. And I completely get that current approaches to analytics mean organizations will often struggle to maximize the detail those insights might contain that we're talking about here, as well as having an incomplete data set. Most of what they do keeps stored and analyzed in silos, but we put all that together, it all lacks one crucial ingredient: context. So what is the secret to overcoming this challenge, would you say?
So the secret is actually understanding what context is important, and the incremental advances that many companies are trying to make is provide a uniform user interface. You still have really the data silos, but I maybe look at them from dashboards that look like they're the same. And people are like, oh, all my data is together. Well, your data is not really together if you don't understand the full context. And by context, I mean topology and dependency mapping. So understanding the relationships and dependencies that these different elements have upon each other. So in a very large environment, there's thousands of alerts going off every day, right? And if something goes wrong, it's really important to know what else is in this arena and influence, right? Think of it as really a supply chain where all of these things are dependent upon each other and you can have a problem that cascades. I'd really want to know what were the relationships between these, and I can ignore 99% of the alerts, and being able to see that regardless of whether it's, end-to-end observability data, business event data, security data, these are the things that are all connected together through dependency mapping. And that allows you to very quickly and intelligently zero in on root cause analysis. And then from root cause analysis, it's really gets you to, instead of trying to solve problems when they occur, when you understand this full topology and dependency mapping, you can actually make adjustments when things start to go wrong. You actually can prevent problems. So that's really the secret sauce, in my view, is having the context of consolidated data. All right. So you don't have silos. Think of it as you don't have a bunch of silos within a really big silo wrapper, but you actually, all of this data, the associations and relationships are contained within a single data store. And that really is the secret sauce that Dynatrace provides through technologies that were developed, years ago in the APM product. So it's really an extension of this APM and observability platform to go solve business problems, to solve security problems, to solve log management and analytics.
And before you came on the podcast today, I was doing a little bit of research on you guys and looking at the latest news, etc. And I read that you recently released something called Grail, which is a data lakehouse purpose-built to solve some of these challenges that we've talked about just now. But can you tell me more about the release and how it could essentially help simplify this ever complicated software world we find ourselves in?
Yeah, so Grail simplifies a lot of things. And I'm going to start with a complex technical definition of Grail and what it is. Yeah. And it's a purpose-built data lakehouse for observability, business, and security data. And it uses a massively parallel processing analytics engine. So let's start with what's a lakehouse. A lakehouse has attributes of a data lake, which is generally massive amounts of data and inexpensive storage, and attributes of a data warehouse, which is more of a curated, structured for a specific purpose. All right. And what we've done is taken elements of both of these, and by using massively parallel processing that's available in public cloud, we can bring thousands of processors to bear on a single query, okay, in parallel. So now you can get very fast answers out of very inexpensive storage. So you don't have to sample or, throw away data, filter it. There's no concept of rehydration from cold storage to hot storage. There's no indexing required. So you can really query anything, anytime, anywhere, and get a fast answer. So that's really the technology behind Grail. And Grail really then allows the other parts of the software intelligent platform. This is our Smartscape, PurePath, one agent. It really allows us to amplify and extend that to many use cases beyond APM and observability. So that's really why there's tremendous amount of excitement about it. Grail initially was considered, all right, it's just a technology enabler, and we'll focus more on, it's Dynatrace, really the brand, but Grail is actually getting a lot of media attention. It's getting, very favorable customer reviews. We released it in October for log management and analytics. We just announced a follow-up with Grail for business analytics. As a marketer, I'm like, okay, the market likes Grail, so I guess we're going to market Grail a little bit. So it's Grail's been fantastic so far for us.
And I'm curious, was unifying data from cloud native and multi-cloud environments, was that something that's been high on your list or to-do list for a while now?
It's been certainly high on my list, but it's been really a high priority for Dynatrace for several years. You mentioned people that you've had on the podcast, and the germination of Grail really happened several years ago in a restaurant. Steve Tack was actually one of the people in here with Bernd Greifnader, who's co-founder, and I think it was Andreas Leifhofer, who's a chief product officer. And they were really talking about this explosion of data and the problem of having AI have to go try and sift through. And data enrichment typically is done through manual tagging and efforts that just don't scale. So they really the idea really germinated several years ago. They started an initiative, and it really picked up to where a fairly substantial percentage of the engineering team has been working on this over the last couple of years. So it really is it was a big deal. It's not something you can do overnight or in a few months. And as Steve had told me, it's you don't want to. People are not asking for another data store. So we really tried to figure out what could we use, and based upon the functionality that we needed, the value that it would provide to the customers, and this sort of performance cost trade-offs that you would make. Grail was really, it doesn't exist, so we need to invent it. So that was really the big idea behind Grail.
And obviously, Grail is a brand new product there. And I suspect we'll have many people listening, hearing about it and the concept behind it for the very first time. Equally, we might have a few Dynatrace customers who've got it and are just starting to get to grips with it. But obviously, you're very close to this. So as an insider here, what excites you most about Grail and the kind of opportunities that it could create?
So I've been traveling around the last couple of months, on the road again next week, meeting with customers, and the I would say the reception's been phenomenal. I'm super excited about it. When I look at what excites me the most about it is it's generally understood now that AI ops is going to be super important in allowing people to really implement their digital transformation initiatives. And what I see is this notion of trustworthy AI. It's ultimately I have to get people out of the loop of fixing things when they go wrong. And for that, I need really smart software. And the software, just when you have AI that's dependent upon correlation, these things happen at the same time. Does it make any sense? If it's not related and you don't have the right context in the data, your AI is going to need to be reviewed by people. It's not really going to be trustworthy. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I think of it as there's a lot of solutions where people look at a bunch of data and AI suggestions, and then they push an automate button. Okay. If there's an automate button that you have to push, in my mind, it's not automation. So trustworthy AI, it's AI that it's AI ops that doesn't need people involved in it. That is something that I see is going to be emergent over the next year or so. I think Grail is an enabler of that. And the other thing is a precursor to trustworthy AI is really explainable AI. And that means that if I understand what this thing is doing, what it's telling me to do, think about root cause analysis. Is it showed me the 100 things that happened in sequence. I can rewind and replay this and see how this cascaded through. And it's telling me this is how it emerged. And then this was what the answer was. This is what I had to do to solve it. And I see when this happened that it fixed it and the problem went away. If I can understand that, and that's really what I call explainable AI, right? It's I can see with my own eyes, this was the problem, this is how it arose, cascaded, and then it went away when this resolution steps were taken. Then I get to the point where I will trust this AI for things that I actually can't understand. And either because I can't possibly do it fast enough and I can't understand why it wants to do something to drive continuous health rather than waiting for something to break and fix it. So what really excites me is getting people out of this chasing problems and people then focusing more on innovation, driving the business forward, implementing these digital transformation initiatives rather than stealing time away to try and go fix something because a new release came out and stuff went south.
And if I was to take you outside of Grail and Dynatrace and that whole world that you've immersed yourself in this year, we are in December now, so everyone's starting to look about 2023 and what kind of tech trends are going to dominate the following year ahead. And I suspect that you're somebody that's always keeping a lookout on the next big thing and the kind of things that could impact businesses in the future. So on that side of things, are there any particular tech trends that excite you, and maybe even look into your virtual crystal ball and leave us with a few predictions or trends to look out for next year?
Yeah, I do think that AI ops has been rather nebulous over the last couple of years in terms of some of the analyst firms trying to define it. And here's, domain specific versus domain agnostic. I think AI ops is going to permeate almost every aspect of IT, and that you will see this trend of, if you can consolidate your data and somehow get the enrichment. Like Dynatrace, I feel that we have a unique advantage right now. As I like to say, an unfair advantage in understanding all the context and dependency mapping between this, and that other ways of enriching data through tagging. There are people that they spend their lives tagging all day long because it's manual and time consuming. And then if anything changes, you want to, right size something in your infrastructure. Well, now you're using different resources and your tags are out of date. It's just untenable to do things that way. And then now again, to come back to trustworthy versus untrustworthy AI, I think trustworthy AI is something that is going to become very important to people. It's like, can I automate or can I not automate? And it really is this trend of skills are really important in IT. It gets very difficult to find good people and retain them. And good people want good work. And that good work means they're working on innovation. They're not fixing the plumbing. So in my mind, this trustworthy AI frees people from doing I'm the hero who's up in the middle of the night trying to fix something that's breaking while everybody's breathing down my neck, to quality of life for a skilled IT worker is working on really cool stuff and doing stuff that makes a difference, like driving the business forward rather than doing a diving catch of saving the company from the abyss, right? So that's a trend I really look forward to in the coming years.
Love that. And for Dynatrace customers listening, a lot of people are starting to be thinking about the return of Dynatrace Perform that looks set to kick off the new year in Las Vegas after going virtual for the last few years. It's a big deal in the Dynatrace community, and I suspect it's your first one, and you're probably quite close to the production of it. So are there any teasers you can leave us with, or anything we can expect from this year's Perform event?
Oh, now you got me on dangerous ground here. First, I'll start with, is that it's so good to be back out meeting customers again. I find customers also have been really thirsty to interact with other customers, talk to executives that are close to the technology. And for me, it's really a two-way street. I learn as much from these customer conversations, having been a technologist for many years, being able to have very technical conversations with customers. It's great for me. And I think this year's Perform is super exciting because Grail was the very nice appetizer, but main course is coming at Perform. And I guess what I would say is a teaser is that Grail, think of it as a gold mine of information. There's a lot more gold in there, different ways to get at the gold. So we will share some of that at Perform. My team's been working on the tracks and sessions for months. We have a lot of customers that will be involved in the session. So that to me is one of the really I would say positive things about this year's Perform is that customers want to be out there. They want to contribute. So we're going to have a lot of customers that are actually co-presenting sessions and giving the customer viewpoint of how they got through this COVID era and how we're emerging much stronger on the other side of it. So the other thing about Perform is we've got some great keynoters, including Tony Hawk, skateboarding legend, who I am super excited to see, not just because he's somebody who was at literally the top of his game for over a decade in a really rapidly evolving sport. He managed to adapt to everything and stay at the top of his game, but also build the business empire, right? He's an extremely successful CEO. So I'm super excited to listen to him as well. So it's going to be a great show. Be great to be back in Vegas as well.
Wow. I know you were quite limited to what you could share with me there, but you've left us with a cryptic teaser and Tony Hawk there. So it doesn't get any better than that. But for anyone listening wanting to find out more information about Grail, any of the topics we explored today, find out more information about Perform, or contact your team, where would be the best place the best starting point for everything?
The Dynatrace.com website.
Yeah.
And I will say there's, if you go to the website, you can navigate around. There's landing pages for Perform where you can register there. If you want to just talk to Dynatrace and learn more, Dynatrace.com/contact. I also lead the, Technical Alliances marketing effort for people that are partners that are interested in being sponsors. We have prioritized invitations out to some of our technology partners now, but if you go to dynatrace.com/partners, then you can apply, and be put in touch with my Technology Alliances team as well.
Awesome. Well, we started the podcast talking about the continued digital transformation, how it's created a data explosion that's overwhelming organizations, and too much data to store and use cost effectively is a big problem. It often leads to all data and no answers, especially when it's stored and analysed in silos and lacks that crucial ingredient, context. But also great to hear about the solution, Grail, and this data lakehouse purposely built to solve some of these challenges. And you've also left us a few teasers about Perform and shared your personal origin story. So a big thank you for sitting down and sharing that with me today. And hopefully we can meet in person at Perform next year. But thanks again for sitting down.
Yeah, thank you so much, Neil. It's been a pleasure being on the show, and look forward to meeting in person some point in the not too distant future.
I often hear about 6 degrees of separation and how we're all linked together. And after we finished recording today's episode, we were talking about football, and Bob is a big Arsenal fan over there in the US, and he talked about a player from the 70s called Charlie George. And I'm quite aware that for many people listening, you won't know who that is, but he played for my club, Derby County, back in the 1970s too. And we could have talked for hours on this subject. So I genuinely hope I can grab a beer with Bob at some point and have a good old natter about football, or soccer, as my friends in the US would say. But in the podcast interview itself, I'm curious, did anything resonate with you today around incomplete data sets, and especially when it's stored and analysed in silos and lacking context? And for your company, does this mean any answers from data analytics are often incomplete, imprecise, or even incorrect, limiting its value to businesses? What are your experiences, and how do you see Grail helping or not helping? Whatever it is, I encourage you to share your opinions, your insights, your experiences, and I'm confident that together we can find a better way forward. So please share that by simply emailing me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram @NeilCHughes, and my website is techblogwriter.co.uk, where you'll find links to 2,200 interviews. Wow, I can't believe we'll be heading towards 2,500 in 2023. But hopefully you'll join me again tomorrow, as I've already got another guest lined up. So a big thank you for listening as always. And until next time, don't be a stranger.